this meeting to 3 equal parts, each one of them for 30 minutes. I will try to finish my, let's say, oral presentation of the basal ganglia, and then we have 2 presentations of papers by 2 groups of students, okay? And again, the point is that we should be in time, okay? Purposely, I didn't put my charger, and my battery usually does not survive for more than 30 minutes, so this might be a kind of a reminder, but please, you know, if you see that I'm overkilling with my time, let me know. So a reminder what we've done up to now. We spoke about the basal ganglia, this network that, let's say, connect all area of the cortex downstream to the striatum and the subthalamic nucleus, then to GPE, GPI, SNR, and outside to the motor center of the brain, either through the thalamus back to the frontal cortex or directly to the brainstem and brainstem motor nuclei like supracolliculus and PPM. This is the basal ganglia, and what we've done is that actually we spoke about 2 models. The first model is this classical, the one that you have to know, and there is exam at the end of the story. Okay, so reminder what I told you, what you have to know, is that the classical D1, D2 direct, indirect model that eventually say that everything that is going in the basal ganglia is modulation of excitability at the beginning by dopamine, D1 and D2, manipulation of the excitability of the striatal projection neuron, okay, and then through the network of the basal ganglia up to the motor cortex, and changes usually induced by dopamine of the excitability of the motor cortex can lead to either akinesia, lack of movements, or dyskinesia, too much movement and involuntary movement. Okay, so this was the first model. And then we say, but this model is a little bit too naive, all neurons of the cortex in one box, and which is okay, but all the neurons of the striatum in one box seem to me a little bit oversimplistic. So we switch over to the reinforcement learning. And then the take-home message was that the basal ganglia are over there in order to enable plastic change in the state-to-action coupling. And this is carried by the dopamine modulation of the efficacy of the corticostriatal connectivity. And again, it should be probably more sophisticated because dopamine is broadcasted to the basal ganglia. So it is a triple Ebbian rule, which is related to the fact that the presynaptic and postsynaptic neuron were activated just at the time that the dopamine burst arrived to the synapse, so triple Ebbian rule. And this state-to-action coupling is actually encoded by or driven by the dopamine signals that encode the mismatch between prediction and reality, and therefore enable us reinforcement learning. That is, we can enforce actions that lead to reality better than prediction, and unenforce actions that led to reality that was worse than prediction. Okay, so this is the second model, actually currently a textbook of neuroscience. I don't know how many of you have been in the Gatsby meeting with Peter Dayan. Okay, that this is a kind of extension of this reinforcement learning. So, but then regarding this very nice model of reinforcement learning, that all what dopamine is doing is by plastic changes of the synapse, then the question is how it could be that we can treat human patient with dopamine agonist in less than 1 minute, change their behavior from completely akinetic to normal behavior. Okay, so it doesn't make doesn't make sense that plastic changes, learning dependent, will happen in less than 1 minute. Learning should be slow, should be less affected by noisy interruptions, so how you can do, how we can conceal it. And therefore, actually, what I would like to tell you today is where we are located right now. And so we are typically Israeli, gam vegam, okay? So both you are right and you are right, okay? And the main message that our current model of the basal ganglia is trying to give is that the basal ganglia teacher, and in a moment I will come to the fact that there is more than just the dopaminergic teacher, but the basal ganglia teachers actually affect, first of all, the motor vigilance or the pseudo temperature of softmax function, to those of you that know what is the softmax function, and they are doing it by the modulation of the excitability of the medium spinal neuron. Okay, so actually here we are back to the D1, D2 direct, indirect, okay? Yes, there is effect on the excitability. This is very important, okay? This is why if I give you now a huge amount of dopamine, okay, or you'll take amphetamine speed, you'll speed your action, okay? So this is over there, okay? And then, but also, they affect the state-to-action coupling, or what we call behavioral policy, by the modulation of the efficacy of the corticostriatal synapse. So actually, what we are trying to do is to combine the two issues, but moreover, what we are trying to put into play is the idea that there is more than one modulator, okay? And this four modulator of the basal ganglia that you see above, dopamine, the cholinergic interneuron of the striatum, the 5-HT serotonin, and the histaminergic teacher, have different effect on the pseudo temperature or the excitability and on the state-to-action coupling. So we need all the four of them, okay, in order to have the full combination. And let's see the logic about it, okay? So let's speak about the dopamine and the 5-HT serotonin, okay? Both of them increase the temperature, okay? Actually, for dopamine, it is very, very clear. If dopamine encodes pleasure or pleasure-related issue, okay, I offer you chocolate, okay, you should increase your temperature, okay, and rise from your chair and come to take the chocolate, okay? This makes sense. Serotonin encodes actually usually aversive event, okay? This is the general saying, okay? But a lion entered to the room, okay? But even in this case, you have to increase the temperature. You don't like to stay in the room, okay? You'd like to run away, okay? So we have to increase the temperature both for pleasure and unpleasure situation, okay? On the other side, if we are speaking about the effect of dopamine and 5-HT on the state-to-action coupling, then I offer you a chocolate and this chocolate was good, then we should reinforce, we should come back here. You enter to a room with a lion, okay? Luckily enough, you ran away and the lion did not kill you. Next time, don't enter the room. So you would like to reduce the state-to-action coupling, okay? So we are having all this, all possible combination, possibly encoded by this different critic. Again, it is coming more. It is a dimensional reduction system with that the main goal is to optimize motor behavior, okay? And the model is trying to incorporate most of the known fact about the basal ganglia, and actually also to provide, let's say, the concrete way to test it. But this is just to tell you where we are located. I will skip this to save in time, to save time, and I will move forward. Okay, so we are done with the basal ganglia, but as far as I like the basal ganglia, and I would like the basal ganglia to be the only structure in the brain, I should admit that they are not the only structure in the brain, okay? And even between this center that encode the current state and the center that encode action, it is not only the basal ganglia that connects them, there is also the cerebellum that connects them, and there is direct cortico-cortical connection, because we can go from the primary sensory area directly to the motor center in the frontal cortex. Okay, so there are many connections between state and action. What we claim is that the basal ganglia and
action is cortex?
No. Action is not only cortex. Action for me is, let's say, the motor cortices, okay? So M1, SMA, premotor, okay? But also the brainstem nuclei, okay? That actually are the origin of the descending pathway to the spinal cord of motor axon. I mentioned specifically supercolliculus, pedunculus, pontinucleus, but there is also the vestibular spinal, also the vestibular nuclei. This is the origin of the vestibular vestibulospinal pathway, and there is also the reticular formation, the origin of the reticulospinal connection. Okay, and this is something which is very important to understand. Again, part of the neglect and the big misunderstanding of most of your teachers in LSEC, okay, is the stupid assumption that the brain is 1 cubic millimeter multiplied, okay? And therefore, actually, and this is just because they are lazy, too lazy to learn neuroanatomy, okay? And I hope that part of the reason that I'm over here is to encourage you not to be as lazy, to be better than your teacher, okay? And the point is, which is very amazing, is that if we, so again, even for motor, okay, motor action, most of the thinking, LSEC and Round, is that it is more cortex-centric, okay? But if we count the number of fibers going from the cortex to the spinal cord, okay, let's speak about monkey, human, it is about 1 million fibers, okay, in the corticospinal pyramidal pathway, okay? If we count the number of fibers going from all these brainstem motor nuclei, is 20 million, okay? The majority of your motor action is carried by the motor center of the brainstem, and indeed, when people have done very local lesion of the motor cortex in monkey, in human it is very different from CVA, cerebrovascular accident, where there is a major destruction of all fibers going to the brainstem. But if you do just a lesion of the motor cortex in monkey, in the beginning they are a little bit paralyzed, okay? But then after a month they completely recover, and the only thing that they are missing is very precise digital manipulation, okay? So they can play basketball, but maybe they will not be able to play piano or to learn to play piano, okay? So coming back, okay? There are many networks, okay? But our claim is that the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, what is called in practical neurology the extrapyramidal. Okay, so we have the pyramidal, okay, which is the corticospinal pathway, okay, that we are very familiar because this is the patient who is stroke, okay, the lost part of the brain. So the extrapyramidal system, this system that actually usually cause movement disorder but not paralysis, are the neural networks that provide the default fast and unconscious link, what Daniel Kahneman, and again, go and read this book, okay? Thinking Fast and Slow. I think that this is one of the most important books that has been written on the brain in the last century, okay? So what Daniel Kahneman defined as this automatic default but unconsciousness system that connect between the brain center that encode the current state and the brain center that encode the action. And again, for those of you, we can make the difference between the basal ganglia and the cerebellum, okay? But this is not important, and more clearly there are connection between the system. We'll put it aside, okay? But the important issue is that now we understand why if there are problems in the basal ganglia, okay, like in Parkinson's disease after dopamine depletion, where synchronous oscillation emerge in the basal ganglia, nobody can overcome it because this is the default automatic system, okay? And if this is the default automatic system, we cannot ignore it. This is what we do. We follow the command of the default automatic system, and therefore, actually, what we claim is that what we do with deep brain stimulation, as well as we done with just inactivation, and as we do today with the lesion of the basal ganglia, we shut down this abnormal default system. And by shutting down this abnormal default system, we enable other systems to compensate for the missing for the missing function of the basal ganglia. So our very crude DBS today, okay, with 4 big contacts, is not that we are actually giving back the normal activity. We do what we call information lesion, okay? Therefore, we use high frequency, but the bottom line is that we inactivate the basal ganglia and again push back enable, let's say, the cortex-cortex connection to compensate for the missing function of the basal ganglia.
So, because this usually requires more energy to activate and slower? So do you see this like in the...
Of course. So just to say, of course, that all this saying of system 1, system 2, say system 1 is default because this is easy. This is the one that make all the bias and so on, so on. It is a little bit stupid, but we need it because we don't have all the time to think about everything that we do. Only when we are facing a problem, we suppose that we should drive on the right side and we are coming to part of the British Empire and they are driving on the left side, so we should leave our automatic behavior and move to a cortical driven that we are completely aware and it is much slower and so on and so on. And this is clearly the case with our patient with deep brain stimulation. If it's not, they are, again, as good as people with normal basal ganglia.
Can it become automatic?
Pardon?
Can it become automatic?
At the end of it, I think yes, okay, because the issue is that it is not only the cortex. We have also the cerebellum, and we have other part of the brain that can compensate. So I think that it is, and I don't have time because I'm getting close to my end. But the issue is that there are other systems that can enable us to be more automatic on our motor repertoire, and if we shut down the basal ganglia, it will be better and better in time. Okay, so this is our model, and the good news is that the cortex can compensate for the basal ganglia. Okay, but actually the bad news that actually are coming is probably the basal ganglia cannot compensate for the cortex. So not all brain disorder are, at least from my point of view, are good candidates for deep brain stimulation. What I'm saying, and again, there is a very big debate on these issues in the DBS community, is that DBS is good for basal ganglia / dopamine serotonin. Okay, in the moment that I'm saying dopamine serotonin, I'm speaking about the basal ganglia. So any disease that I can manipulate by dopamine serotonin, I will be able to help this patient by deep brain stimulation of the basal ganglia. But when the disease ran away from the basal ganglia, like in the dementia of Parkinson's disease dementia, like in Alzheimer's disease, it will be too late, okay? This, because I cannot shut down all the cortex, and the basal ganglia are probably more simple, okay, than the cortical network and cannot compensate for the cortex. So there is a limit. There is a limit. Not all brain disorder, from my point of view, but again, I am having other friends because this is to argue with some of my best friends, that their title of lecture is "There is no neuron or brain disease that can escape DBS." Okay, so this is a kind of local debate, just to say. But the good news is that basal ganglia-related disorder, and as you see, I'm broadening the scope of basal ganglia-related disorder. It is not only Parkinson, can be treated by the brain stimulation. Yes.
Do you know if the deep brain stimulation has side effects on other brain regions that are not?
It is a big issue. Of course, it has side effect. Let's keep. I'm trying to be on time. Okay, so those learn the trick. Okay, so if you are limited in time, you cannot respond to all questions. Okay, and it is not that I'm escaping. I would like to speak a lot about it, but so let's do it after. Okay, so the major idea is that actually what we are trying to say is that yes, we can make DBS even better for the next generation and for more complicated disease. For example, like having closed loop deep brain stimulation, namely even in disease state, probably the basal ganglia are not all the time abnormal. So our major idea is that one should detect when the basal ganglia are abnormal and only then stimulate. For example, you see over there above real recording from GPE or GPI, I don't remember, neuron in MPTP-treated monkey. You see that on the right he became oscillatory, but on the left he has a kind of normal activity. So the idea is to stimulate only in the proper time. We publish the proof of concept 6 years ago, and indeed it was taken immediately by everybody in the community, and there are already first acute short-term clinical trials in Oxford where we collaborate, and there is a motivated industry, so there is a chance for it. And clearly, what we believe is that in the future, what we need is multi-site recording of LFP spiking activity. We need detection of the bad guys, okay? And the bad guys, in our opinion, are the long episodes, so we can make the difference between short and long episodes of beta synchronized oscillation, and to say the long episodes are the bad guys and you should target this one. And moreover, we should use wearable smartphone home sensing of the clinical symptoms and quality of life of the patient. We should have many stimulation, contact, and current source, not only 4. And then what everybody here should know, use machine learning algorithms and actually to mimic the basal ganglia and to make online adaptation of the threshold between the long and the short beta episode according to the symptoms of the patient and his self-assessment of the quality of life. Okay, so this is the direction that we are going now. And moreover, and as I said, this is already ongoing in Parkinson, but the big dream or the vision of the lab is to move it to the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Okay, so negative 1% of the population, okay, usually start at the age of 25, okay. Most of these patients at the age of 40, in the best case, will be in hostels. In the worst case, they will be hidden for us, okay. We push them aside, okay, and we put them somewhere in mental hospital. It is very nice to have a radio program and to say that this is bad. It is your responsibility. If you waste the gift of IQ that you were given in order to do theoretical models that nobody care about it and not use it to cure schizophrenia, okay? Don't blame the public, blame yourself, okay? And I do see it as a kind of personal, again, as a personal responsibility of all of us to make change in the life of this 1% of population. If I will get today Alzheimer or Parkinson, I'm 65 years old, I end my life, okay? Those 25 years old patients with schizophrenia, 70% of the homeless in the United States are schizophrenic, okay? We completely ignore them, okay? And they think that this is for us. And okay, so this is the last slide, okay? I really mean it. So this is my last slide, trying to summarize everything. Again, recommendation for 2 books, okay? One is Skinner, okay? Beyond Freedom and Dignity, again, the beginning of behaviorism, and actually what I've tried to tell you, okay? That we are kind of the goal of our life, okay, is to move our gene to the next generation and to increase dopamine in our brain, okay? So there is no freedom and no dignity in this, okay? We are actually slave of our dopamine, okay? And then this is another book about consciousness lost and found, and I hope that I will be able to show you that yes, we are able, although freedom and dignity is lost by this thing, maybe we'll be able to find it again, okay? So you should be offended by this thing, but moreover, actually, it is coming to a very big ethical question. Who is responsible? It is you or your brain? For Yigal Amir, okay? Not know who is it is. Should we punish him or only protect society by putting him into prison? Most of us would like to punish him, okay? So can we punish someone that has done anything only because his dopamine system and force him to do something like that, okay? So from my point of view, the question is that yes, we can punish because for us human, and for us, okay? Not all human, I'm not speaking about a psychotic, okay? Human, I'm not speaking about your dog or about your cat, okay? I'm speaking about consciousness, people that are aware of their doing, okay? We have the ability to trade off short positive action with long in order to increase the cumulative good of our behavior. And moreover, we as humans have language, and for me, part of actually what we got with language is consciousness and self-awareness. So we can think about our behavioral policy, okay? We are aware of our behavioral policy, we human that have self-awareness and can change it. And therefore, we are responsible for our behavioral policy. And look how much is important for the court in most of the Western country if the person that is coming to the court has done it impulsively, okay, or has planned the action from the beginning, okay? It is a major issue, okay? If he planned it, okay, then it is part of his behavioral policy, okay? And we are responsible for our behavioral policy, okay? And therefore, yes, actually what I claim is that I gave you now the supporting point, okay, to change your behavior, okay, because you can think it, okay, and therefore you are responsible for it, and you can use it in order to do something good in your life. If I would like to joke, I would say come and do basal ganglia research, but if putting aside jokes, okay, do something important in your PhD, okay? This is the major issue, okay? Because if you will not do something important in your PhD, most of us, you will not do something important in your life at the end of it, except to family and so on. So, thank you. This is them. Just in time, have a look, okay? the matter of practice, okay? And we are having 2 presentations, okay?
אנחנו כבר מוסיפים שייתכן מאוד שנעשה בטכנולוגיה. כן, איפה זה? אפשר לעשות כאילו בכל מקרה, או רבע שעה עכשיו, או רבע שעה בעצם.
Let's do 5 minutes now, so you will time. 5 minutes now, and then 10 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
כן?
מה פתאום? זה הגיע עם המחשב ככה.
זה לא נכון. לא, אבל זה לא משנה את זה שלך כל פעם? זה לא משתנה?
לא.
אני סידרתי את זה.
וואלה, הוא אחד יפה.
כן.
טוב.
אשתי דעתי בחורה שם.
נראה לי אמא שלך לה. גילאים.
תל אביב. תל אביב.
יהיה סבבה. איך אתה עם זמנים?
זה לא קיים פה כלום, נכון? נראה לי אמור להיות בסדר.
אין פה איזה? דבר טוב? אמורים להיות?
לא, זה זמן שאני... כל אחד והגברות שלו. לא התנצלים שם.
אני חושב שנייה להשתין. מדדת את זה זמן? הוא לא יהיה.
כמה זמן לוקח לך?
סוף? לא יודע. כן, קצת טעים.
שנים נשארתם עד הסוף?
לא, 10 דקות בסך הכל.
כמה זמן רק זה שש? כאילו,
אני חושב שזה בערך 6 דקות. לא באמת יודע. כן, אני גם עשיתי עם אקסטרה ובאקסטרה אני לא אעשה להגיד שמי שרוצה מזמן.
אורן עומרי, אתם רוצים שנתחתן ב-20 או ב-25 דקות? ב-20 או ב-25 דקות?
מה, להגיד לנו שכאילו שמים לנו זמן? האמת שיש לנו פה שעון.
אז שלי יתעצב ב-25 דקות.
כנראה שנאחר ב-25 דקות.
רגע, שעון. כדי לדעת כאילו
אני יכול ב-25 להתחיל את הדיסקשן.
כן? סגור.
מעדיף קצת כאילו הכי מאוחר. אתה רוצה שיסמן לך שיצלצל או שכאילו...
לא, זה יצלצל. אני יצלצל ב-25 דקות כי זה חלק מהמשחק. זה חלק. ככה עושים בחיים.
רק בגלל זה.
זה אומר נגיד שאם אתם לא גמרתם ב-25 דקות, עכשיו יש לכם עוד 5 דקות ואתם אוכלים את הכל של השני.
אנחנו דיברנו שנעשה כאילו חצי שעה.
רגע, 5 דקות האחרונות
התכוננו לחצי שעה.
סבבה.
ראיתם איך אני עושה? זה נורא מעניין. שאלות אחר כך. עוד פעם, זה כאילו, במקור הייתי נותן לקבל 45 דקות. לא דבר כזה. לא, זה בסדר.
Okay.
So, just a minute. Pleasure to introduce Oren and Omri, that will speak about the paper of David Arkadir et al. On DYT1 dystonia, increased risk-taking in humans. It will be in 25 minutes. The ring will come on, okay? Then we have 5 minutes for discussion or to end the talk. But in 30 minutes, we are moving to the second, okay? And this is just to translate the way it's done in the life.
This is real life for me. No? Okay.
No. Don't take it seriously. And even real life is not seriously.
Okay.
No, enjoy.
Alright, so like you said, we're presenting an article about DYT1 dystonia and how it increases risk-taking in humans. It was written by David Al-Qadir and Yael Niv, who learned here in LSAC a couple of years ago. I don't know, maybe someone know them by Dudi, perhaps. Alright. Okay, so on today's agenda, we'll be seeing reinforcement learning. This will help us model our task. We're going to dystonia, a sort of introduction to dystonia, what it is and how it affects our basal ganglia. The behavioral experiment, the results, the discussion, your applause, unnecessary, but appreciated. Okay. Alright, so learning. We learn through trial and error. We learn to choose better options and avoid worse ones through trial and error, but how exactly this happens, we sort of went through with Chagai, but let's say currently we're not 100% sure, so what do we need to learn through trial and error? We need to remember the options that we have and the values for them. This is something we just need to remember. This is a simple mechanism. You want to learn, so you have to remember what you had beforehand, and you have to give these options values to know which one gives you the best reward. Alright. So that's the learning mechanism that we can think that's in the brain. Same thing, we have to store these options and their values. Alright, so what happens when this mechanism in our brain has faults? What kind of consequences does this have? So one consequence could be, for instance, that we'd be learning too much from putting too much value for only positive predictions. Okay, so what happens? We keep on putting positive predictions, more value for positive predictions than negative predictions. So we're learning more from positive. We'd be taking more chances because we gained more and we learned more that way. So that's maybe a certain fault that we're going to be talking about throughout our lecture too. And so this learning process in the brain, also like Chagai said, is hypothesized to work through strengthening and weakening of neurons in connections between neurons in two parts of the brain, the cortex and the striatum, where the options are represented by the neurons in the cortex, and the activity of the neurons in the striatum represents the value for these options. So a reinforcement learning model, like I said, this is one of the things we're going to be talking about, and this is going to help us model this mechanism that happens in our brain. So pretty standard, we already went over this pretty much, so I won't be going over this too long. Alright, I'll break pretty much, but given a state, just like to take action to maximize the future reward, we're looking for a policy so that we maximize our reward. Okay. Alright, so this is a certain reinforcement learning task. We're given two cues. This is a cue, this is a cue. We have, over here it's 1 second, but we have 1 second to figure out, just choose a cue. And then after we chose this cue, we get a reward for choosing this cue. And then we have the next trial, which is the same thing happening. Okay, so our experiment is going to be, this is going to be just an example, just so we can talk about the reinforcement learning model a bit afterwards. But so we're going to have 4 different cues. Each cue is going to have a value. One of them is going to be 0 cents, one of them is going to be 5 cents, one of them is going to be 10 cents, and the other one, the last one, is going to be a risky cue. It's going to be a probability of half to get 10 cents and half to get 0 cents. So it's a risky cue. Should I take it? Should I not? Now the point is to learn these cues and the values. Or the point of the whole task in the end is after 100 trials, to maximize future reward. Okay? Yeah.
Is that on humans?
Yes. Yes. Done on humans. Yeah. It can be done on anything else too, but humans, it's the easiest. Okay. All right. So. Alright, we weren't supposed to see all this yet, but, so I'm sorry about the bombardment of data, but let's get it. So this is the three reinforcement learning models we're going to be using to model this the mechanism in our brain. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be fitting these models to the subjects. Okay, each model is going to have a certain number of parameters, and these parameters are going to be fit to each subject specifically, and we're going to see how this works out in the end. So we're looking at V is a value function. Okay, this is the first one, the classical temporal differences model. V is a value function. We've given a Q, and we want to update this value function depending on the reward that we got currently. So we're given a Q, and this is our update policy. All right, we're going to look at our old Q, and we're going to add it to the difference between the reward that we got for taking this action minus the old Q. So this is the difference between the actual reward. So this would be our prediction error. And eta is the learning parameter. So it's how fast we learn, the learning rate. And so if someone had a positive prediction, then this R would be higher than the old value, and then they'd be updating this value positively. If someone had a negative prediction, then the opposite would occur. This would be a negative, and we'd be changing this negative. Okay, pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. And like you see, it's balanced, so it's symmetrical because we learn on both sides the same amount. There's no difference between learning from positive and from negative. All right, as opposed to the asymmetric model, which is the same thing with the same parameters, but one more parameter, kappa. Now, same thing over here. Delta is the difference between the reward and the Q, and the old prediction of the Q. Okay, and now we have a 1 plus kappa, or 1 plus minus kappa. So, for people that learn asymmetrically, that learn more from positive than from negative, or more from negative than from positive, if the delta is bigger than 0, for instance, for positive learning, impaired positive learning, I wouldn't call it impaired exactly, but we'll just call it like that for now. So for impaired positive learning, we're going to be seeing a K that's going to be bigger, plus, okay, a kappa. That's plus. We're going to be putting more weight on positive, right? And as opposed to when our delta is negative, this K is going to be smaller, so we're going to be minimizing the negative part less. So it's like I think people understand, correct?
What determines the kappa?
This is a parameter that every model, every person, every subject, this parameter is fit to him. Okay?
Determine the bias.
And we have the utility model. It's basically the same thing as the classical TV model, but there's a utility function, nonlinear utility function, and this just means that I interpret it as sort of people have a subjective. People take these rewards subjectively. So when 5 cents isn't your 5 cents isn't my 5 cents, I probably give more weight to 5 cents for some reason because I need them. So, and the way this is represented is another parameter where for 0, utility function is going to be like it's an identity for 0 and 5. So 0 cents is the same for everybody, 5 cents is the same for everybody. But 10 cents is going to have a parameter A. When the A is bigger than 1, then my 10 cents is more important for me than your 10 cents for you, depending on your A too. So this is all relative to the 0 and 5. Actually, it's not to other people, but so these are the 3 models, and each model has the probability action selection function. All right, and this is the softmax. This action selection. This is the probability of choosing action A over action B.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about dystonia. We take this opportunity because we will talk about diseases in the next slide to expose you to some information about this interesting disease. Dystonia is a syndrome characterized by involuntary spontaneous movement. It is not the case of people with constant muscle contraction. It is the case of people with continual movement. This is, of course, this is a hyperkinetic disorder, unlike Parkinson's is hypokinetic. It's considered as motor, until the last period, it's considered as motor disorder only, and until now in some places, in some sense. Okay, a little bit about different types of dystonia. We classify dystonia into focal dystonia, that is constricted to specific muscle or area, into segmental dystonia, that affects half of the body, or generalized dystonia, that affects all the body or many parts in the body. We can distinguish between primary dystonia and secondary dystonia. When primary dystonia is the case, the dystonia is the main or the only neurological disorder the patient has. And secondary dystonia is the case that the dystonia is induced by other brain damage. We will focus on the case of primary dystonia. Okay, let's see how it looks like. This is the case of writer's cramp or musician's cramp. It's a type of dystonia that happens to people that use fine motor skills in the day by day. It is triggered by fine motor activity, and it's not a constant situation. This case, this guy got his dystonia in the age of 30. It began as focal dystonia in the neck and deteriorated over the years into generalized dystonia that affects many parts of his body. Very interesting guy. I don't think we will have time in the end to talk about him more. So look at his TED Talk, Napoli 2015. He healed himself from the dystonia. This is a very interesting story. Okay, a little bit about treatments that exist today. As almost any disease, dystonia, healthy lifestyle and avoiding stress can improve patient condition in some extent. There are many treatments on the shelf today. Not every one of them can help everybody. First of all, botulinum toxin, the cosmetic Botox, can help to paralyze individual muscles in cases of focal dystonia. Deep brain stimulation can be used in cases of generalized dystonia. In this case, we want to reduce movement, so the electrode is implanted in the globus pallidus internus and activating it. So it inhibits more the thalamus, and the unwanted movements are reduced. Okay, a little bit about the type of dystonia that we are going to talk about. The DYT1 dystonia is a relatively rare type of dystonia. It is generalized dystonia. It can affect all the body. It is inherited, and the gene is known. And we will hear in the next presentation more about it is possible to produce mice with this genetic deficit, and something that is interesting to do. And we have reasons today to suspect that the DYT1 dystonia is related to some abnormal plasticity in the striatum. So let's look closer. In this research from 2009, the researchers produced mice with DYT1 dystonia and cut the brain into tiny slices and tried to induce LTP and LTD in the neurons of the striatum. They used three groups of mice, two groups of control, wild type, that are wild type, wild type with the human gene of the tyrosine A protein that is responsible to the disease, and mice with the human gene with the DYT1 dystonia mutation. We can see here the EPSP's amplitude versus the time. here they're trying to induce long-term depression using some high-frequency stimuli. Can you see them? Unfocused. The black dots are the wild type, and the white dots are the wild type with the human gene, while the gray dots are the micropresentation. You can see here that after they try to induce the depression, the control group affected, but the mutation group didn't. You can see it here also in the EPSC shape and the amplitude. You can see that there is some difference between the control groups, but the mutated group is it's much more clear that they are not affected by the long-term depression high-frequency stimuli. In this trial, they try to induce long-term potentiation and then depotentiation, and we can see also that the potentiation is much stronger in the micropresentation, and the depotentiation don't affect them at all, while in the control group, we see what we expect to see: potentiation and then depotentiation. You can see also here. Let's
What? Potentiation and then?
depotentiation.
Depotentiation.
Reverse the potentiation process. Let's summarize a little bit what we saw here. So we know that there is some bias in mice in the synaptic plasticity. Let's see what we can do if we can find any behavioral effects of this.
Okay, so like you said, we have some abnormality in the plasticity in mice, in the striatum and the cortex, right? So suppose we have this same phenomenon for humans too, and now what we can think is, so we know that dopamine is a signal for reward. We know that dopamine modulates plasticity, right, in the cortex and the striatum. So we think that the synaptic plasticity in the corticostriatal network is a neuronal substrate for learning. Our behavior is affected by the synaptic plasticity, decision making. Okay, so given a state, we'll just show this around. Given a state, we make a prediction and an action based on the state. We have a prediction error. If we were successful, as in positive prediction, then we have an increase in dopamine levels, and then we have LTP, and recently active synapses responsible for positive prediction. On the other side, if we aren't successful, then we have a decrease in dopamine levels, and then we have LTD, and recently active synapses responsible for negative prediction. Okay, so now we think that learning is obviously modulated by the synaptic plasticity. Dopamine modulates synaptic plasticity. Okay. Alright, so again, we're back to our reinforcement learning task. So they took 16 subjects, they took 32 subjects, 16 subjects paired gender and age-wise, and they ran 300 trials on these patients, subjects. And so we have two groups. We have group D, which is going to be the dystonia group, and group C, which is going to be the control group. And like I said, so we're going to call the risky Q, or risky trial, is going to be the name for taking the 10 or 0 probability risky Q versus the 5Q, the 5-10Q. Okay? So that's going to be our risky trial. We're going to be talking about this because this is the most interesting one. The expectation of the 10 and 0 and the 5 are the same, and we'd like to see what people would be willing more to take. The risk Q or the one that I have 5 and that's what I'm going to stick with, or I can take 10 or I can get 0, you know? Okay. Alright, again, this is the experiment. This is the 5-10Q, this is the risky Q. Alright, so this is what we think is going to happen. So if what we say is right, as in the hypothesis that you saw earlier, so if given this experiment, this risky trial, if we take the 10 cents, if we take the risky Q, and we gain 10 cents, so the synaptic strength for the GYT1, the red, is going to be higher than the synaptic strength for the control group, currently. So the positive prediction for the synapses for positive reward. And the opposite is going to be for the zero sense. So we get zero sense from taking the risky cue. We're going to see it's going to be less minimized. It's going to be higher than the synaptic strength is going to be less minimized than the DYT1, than the control group. Okay? So we'd be less willing to do the same action again. This is what this means. Makes sense? And now we're looking at the value of this cue. So obviously the value for this cue is going to be higher. This means that the value for this cue is going to be higher for the DYT1, the group D, than group C. And the proportion of choosing this risk cue is also going to be higher for the group D than group C. This is what we expect to see. And these are our results. So this is pretty straightforward. This is our group D, group C, and this is the amount of times, this is the mean for group C to take take the risky cue, and this is the mean for the group D to take the risky cue, and there's a significant probability of this not occurring just because we're taking random people. So this is around 25%, and this is around 50. And there are some people that are more risk taking, and there's obviously less. But as you can see, there's a lot of people in group C that all they want to do is take the 5. So you see it's relevant. And we can also look at the severity of dystonia as opposed to how many times they take the risky cue. As you can see, more severe, the more risky cue they take. Okay. And this is also something interesting. Now, one could suppose that we're learning not through a cognitive, we're learning through a cognitive system and not through trial and error. So if that was true, then we'd be seeing that what we're seeing here basically is trying to prove that this isn't through a cognitive system, this is through trial and error. This shows the amount of times taking the risky cue after winning, and this is after losing. Right? So after winning, we're obviously going to take the risky cue more because we just won, and so we learned positively from it. The thing is, here we see that taking the risky cue is much higher after winning and also after losing than the control group for the group D. Okay, and so we're actually learning here because there is a difference between learning through trial and error, not learning through trial and error, because you can see that you take the risky cue more times than after winning. Okay. Now we're looking at the model comparison for 3. Yes.
Can you go back to the first?
I can go back real quick.
Okay.
I'm not going back. 1 second.
Okay. Okay, I will ask
Is
you.
that it? No, not it.
There's one.
Yes. Okay.
So does this reflect learning or no learning?
This reflects learning through trial and error. This means that after winning the last trial, after winning the 10 cents, the last trial that we took the 10, the probability one, right, we're more, the proportion of times that we take is higher. So this is the trial after winning. And this is the trial after losing. So we took the 10, the probability of the risky coin, and we lost. We didn't get the 10 cents, we got 0 cents. So we're learning because the next time.
So you learn more in the
It shows that they are not choosing randomly.
It shows that they're learning through trial and error as opposed to other cognitive systems. This is what it's supposed to show. All right. So we looked at the three reinforcement learning models, and this is a model comparison for them. Their parameters are fit using the likelihood maximization, maximum likelihood, and so this is the comparison between the asymmetric and the classical learning model. This is a p-value. Above this line, every dot supports the asymmetric model as opposed to the classical model. Okay? So as you can see, the majority of the points, these points is a subject that they fit the parameters to, and because they have different number of parameters, we can't compare them one by one, but they use the likelihood ratio to compare them, and we found that mostly supported by asymmetric model. All right, and over here is the same thing above the line. This because the number of parameters were equal, They did compare. They could compare it one by one, and where you can see that most of the dots are on the line, so they can both be explained by both models, but they use a t-test on these models, and it turned out that it supported much higher the asymmetric model. So now that we know that the asymmetric model is the one we're looking at, we can look at the kappa for the asymmetric model. That was our asymmetric parameter. That's the parameter that's important for learning positively more or negatively more. And for the DY21 patients, group T, we saw that we're on 5 almost. So for the DY21 patients, we saw that the kappa is actually much higher than the group C for their control group. So they obviously, through this model, they also learn positive.
Okay. Finish it. First of all, they look for cognitive bias for decision making, for bias in the decision making, because they know about bias in the plasticity, and they try it. Woohoo! Secondly, they found cognitive symptoms of what they consider as model disorder. That it's much. This is important result. Third, let's try very shortly fit the results to the go-no-go, to the direct-indirect model that we talked about. The go-no-go is another name for the direct and indirect. We are the go and the no-go, the direct and the indirect pathways are activated by input from the cortex and modulated by dopamine from the substantia nigra. Well, I want to have some time for questions, so we will do it quickly. If the go pathway will learn stronger via strong LTP and weak LTD, these results are possible. If the go and the no-go have the same bias in the synaptic plasticity, it will not fit the model. So the bias is not only that the neurons in the striatum have stronger LTP, but that there must be some bias between the go and the no-go. Secondly, we can see that if we will come back to this nice graph, we can see that we are the biased. The people with the dystonia learn symmetrically, we learn asymmetrically. And I think we have 3 minutes for questions. So we'll go first.
Was the relation between what you showed us the beginning with the micro thing, that you saw that there is no difference in before and after potentiation and depression to what you showed here? Because it seems like there's no learning, and here it seems like there's maybe I didn't
So
understand.
what we are trying to say that there is biased learning in the people with the dystonia. We all have some biased learning, but they have different biased learning. Maybe the neurons in their go pathway learn stronger from positive events than from negative events. So the go is much stronger in the case of positive events. Every time they go to the 10 cents, they learn a lot. Every time they don't get the 10 cents, they don't learn at all. So or they learn less because the plasticity is biased.
Okay, I'm still not sure I understand the relation to the mice.
The mice have abnormal plasticity. They saw that they have abnormal plasticity in the cortex and striatum. So
We have reason to suspect
in mice with DY21 dystonia.
We have reason to suspect that humans have this bias too.
And if they have this bias, then this could explain the risk taking that DY21 dystonia patients have.
Yeah.
Can you return to the side with the bars?
Which one?
I don't know.
Same with the bars.
With the Malay Valakim. Yeah.
This.
Yeah. But it looks like when the DYT group 1, I don't see how this is learning. It looks like their chance to choose any possibility is not about chance.
Okay.
And that's probability.
It's just, what do you mean they're not learning? Explain. What do you?
Like there's 50% of choosing the risky Q and then.
Okay, so this isn't 50% of choosing a risky Q. This is the proportion of time that they chose it. It is in a sense the probability, but it's at the same time, we're looking at the relative. Okay, we're looking at this relatively to that, and what we're trying to, the point is we're learning through trial and error, because if I take the risky Q more times than after I learn, than after I learn from the positive Q. If I keep consecutively getting this 10 cents, 10 cents after taking the risky Q, I'm more prone to taking it, right? This is what this shows. This is the amount of times that I took the risky Q after I won.
It
After
just
one
looks
day,
like
at least
they don't learn, and in contrast to the control,
Why don't they learn?
because the probability of choosing any of the choices is not above 20. It just seems like they're learning
Okay, this is
of the wins is impaired, not of the loss.
the wins is impaired, not of the losses.
But maybe after I'm able to explain more.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. I think I understand. Let me think for a second.
We'll discuss it later, but again, so first of all, thanks, okay? And I think that you've done it really, really nice, okay? Matti told me to ask one question, but I will not really ask it. I will just leave it for the break, okay? But I will put it on the chair and then to give you feedback, okay? So the question that I'm asking is, and again we are leaving it for the discussion outside, is okay. As I mentioned, it's very nice to show that this is not only motor, okay? There are also cognitive. But can you take it back to the motor disorder frame and see how abnormality of synaptic plasticity might lead to the motor problem of dystonia patient? Okay, we'll discuss it later. Okay, this is open. Okay, and this is one issue. Okay. The second issue is just to share with you. DBS for dystonia is a miracle, okay? We are having the big majority of DYT1 patient in either Jerusalem or in Brooklyn, because this is a Jewish Ashkenazi mutation, okay? And really, patients are coming at the age of 10, okay? It is much more impressive. Look for try to look in YouTube, but the patient at the age of 10 to 15 are coming already in wheelchair, and then later they are coming back normal, completely normal to normal life, including in Israel going to the army and so on and so on. Okay, so it's really kind of a miracle, and what we are missing is I would say monkey model of dystonia, okay, and real understanding for the pathophysiology, okay, because all this therapy is based on the fact that we know, actually started from the fact that we know that in Parkinson we see dystonia, and DBS help the dystonia of Parkinson. So the logic was carried out, but this is
Also in the subthalamic?
pardon?
Also in the subthalamic?
There are some groups that are doing also in the subthalamic nucleus, and it is very, very successful. Right now, most of us, we are very conservative. There are human on the other side. GPI DBS is working beautifully. We don't play with it. Okay? But for those that first trial in the GPI was not working, then we will try subthalamic nucleus. Last comment now for you, okay, to you. When you do presentation, avoid writing, okay? So, for example, the three models that you gave, okay? The symmetric, the non-symmetric, and the utility, give graph for it. Don't give the equation, okay? For the next time. Presentation should be graphic. One picture is better than 1,000 words, okay? And this is a kind of take-home message. 5 minutes break, okay? And we'll come back, the other one will put in.
מה זה? לא, שלא?
תודה, בסדר. אחרי זה כיף שאתה חייב. תוציא נשתתי קצת.
איך אני מסביר את זה פה? היה שם
כאילו, ה-utility function
זה אני אמר.
פיטית או לא?
ה-utility
function פיטית מדהים, אבל זה לא חוכמה. הם עושים לזה פיט או לא? מה מתוך איזה משפחה פרמטרית? כי המסקנה הייתה שהמודל עם הקאפה הוא כאילו מסביר הכי טוב.
נכון.
אבל בגלל זה אני שואל, האם במודל, אבל לא יש אקסטרה פרמטר ביחס לקלאסיקה, למה לא? יש קאפה?
לא.
כי אין לו את
ה-A.
ה-K.
ה-A, שנייה, יש את הקאפה לסימטרי, ויש את ה-A ל-utility model. כאילו יש לו עוד פרמטר שלא הראיתי.
אז יש פרמטר אחד שעושה פיט ל-utility function. אבל לקלאסיקה אין עוד פרמטר, יש רק learning rate.
יש רק learning rate ויש ב-inverse rate הפרמטר, שזה
בכל מקרה יש.
אוקיי, סבבה.
נכון? צריך לבחור actions איכשהו.
כן.
תמיד יש, אם אני מבין נכון, כאילו.
כן, תמיד יש.
אז יש מודל אחד, לקלאסיקה אין עוד פרמטר, וב-utility וב-asymmetric יש עוד פרמטר אחד לכל אחד.
ולכן אפשר לעשות את ה... אוקיי. וזה נכון מה שאמרתי לגבי utility function?
שמה?
שהוא יותר סביבטיבי?
זה לא שאלות ל-utility function.
ככה אני מפרש את זה. ככה אני מפרש את זה בתור.
כן. אבל? קצת אני בזמנים, אבל בקטנה. קצת גם. קצת בזמנים. כן, טוב קיצצתי, אבל סיימנו בזמן.
יש פה מקלדת, משהו?
אתה רוצה לשאול אותו? לגבי המקרה של הבחור שיש לך.
מה הוא חושב על זה?
לא, גם זה היה בעברית וזה היה בקהל יותר, למרות שזה היה יותר אנשים.
זה היה יותר אנשים, זה היה
אבל יותר.
בעברית, זה היה קל.
כן.
אני שונאת את האנגלית הזאת, כאילו, זה מחייב אותי בטקסט כתוב. לא יכול לעשות.
נכון, גם את זה ידיד באנגלית.
לא מכירה את זה, יהיה לי באנגלית.
תקשיב, שכחתי לעבור את זה, תמותי בהפסקה למחוק את זה.
In 20 minutes or 25 minutes?
In 20, I think,
We can do it
squeeze it if you want.
Yeah, we can squeeze it.
We can squeeze it to 20 minutes if you
No,
want.
no, no, no. You can. You have total 30 minutes.
Oh.
But 25 for speaking and 5 minutes
Yes,
for questions.
so 25.
And that you can use. Actually, you can say that you skip the. But the question is when you would like to leave the reminder. And
25.
25.
If we get to 25.
So again, second talk today, the rules are clear. Okay, we have 25 minutes for the talk and 25 minutes for discussion. And Ron and Catherine will speak about the role of the cerebellum in the hereditary dystonia DYT1. It was already been mentioned before. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, we're gonna talk about mouse models, and as Dave said before, I'm not gonna explain about dystonia, but we're gonna talk about DYT1, which is a movement disorder, and it's caused by a loss of function mutation in a gene which is called taurusin A. It is known that it is a protein that we have in our body, like humans have in our body, and the majority of DYT1 patients share a single amino acid deletion in this gene. This protein is a member of AAA family of adenosine triphosphate. It has a connection to the heat shock family, and it's expressed in the substantia nigra compacta. How this mutation caused dystonia is still unknown, but there is a mouse model that these researchers made, and they embryonically targeted taurusin A, but at the beginning they tried and they saw that the mouse model didn't really mimic the dystonia that we see in human patients. So most of the patients are, like Hagai said, get this disease by the age of 26. So they basically have to live with it throughout life. And they talked about the focal and the generalized, so I'm not going to talk about it again. They have prolonged and involuntary contractions of muscles. Yeah. Both the agonist and the antagonist are working together, so they have this movement disorder. And there are several brain areas that are connected to dystonia. The first one is the basal ganglia, and the second one is the cerebellum. So I'm not going to explain again, but we have the striatum, which is the caudate and the putamen nucleus, and they are connected to the GPI and the GPE, and all kind of relations, excitatory, inhibitory. Dopamine is working in two directions, excitatory on the indirect and inhibitory, right? On the excitatory on the direct and inhibitory on the indirect pathway. So Hagai taught us about this, and we have the cerebellum, which we have the cortex of the cerebellum and the deep nuclei of the cerebellum, which they are all connected to the motor system, and they basically modeled this mice model and they try to see the difference between targeting the basal ganglia and targeting the cerebellum. And so they did a knockdown to the tyrosine A. At the beginning, they tried to do knockout of the gene, and they saw that it's lethal, so there's no mice. So they did only knockdown of the gene, and they got an abnormal motor symptoms. And what they found is that when they did the knockdown in the basal ganglia, they didn't saw any dystonic symptoms. But when they knocked down in the cerebellum, they saw something that is really similar to the patients in human patients. So here are some of the results, and it's going to be much more nice in a second. So they targeted the tyrosine A in the basal ganglia and in the cerebellum. You can see here in B the GFBF expression in the basal ganglia and here in the cerebellum. And you can see how the hind limb of the mouse is cramped. Like this is a symptom that you can see on a mouse that has this dystonia. And these are two agonist muscles that in EMG they show that they are working together. So if this one works and this one works as well, it's what makes this cramping in the foot. So basically, as I said, they targeted in the basal ganglia and in the cerebellum, both the tyrosine A, and they checked to 13 weeks after the injection of the
short RNA.
Yes, they targeted it with the short RNA, which silence the gene. And as you can see, even 13 weeks after the injection, in the basal ganglia, they don't see any dystonic symptoms. But here, when they targeted the cerebellum, even 3 weeks after, and of course 13 weeks after, we have a real high score for dystonia. And this was one of the major results that they got. And moreover, when they looked at the percent of the knockdown that they did in the mouse, they saw that when it's more damaged, you have a higher score in the dystonic symptoms. Okay. So after they found that the cerebellum is the one that is probably most important and not the basal ganglia, they wanted to see the neuronal activity, because this is a mouse and you can do whatever you want. And so they looked at the Purkinje cells and the DCN, the deep nucleus. Deep cerebellum nucleus. Yeah. So they did in vivo extracellular recordings, and they found an abnormality in the firing excitability and firing rate. So here is the results for the DCN neurons and for the Purkinje neurons, and we'll go a little bit inside. So what they saw. Sorry. This is a non-targeted shRNAs, which means it's a kind of control because they did injected shRNA, but it's not targeted to the tyrosine A. And this one is the the group of the mice that had dystonia. And you can see that the firing rate, the average firing rate of the dystonic mice is like half of the non-targeted, and it is really, really significant. And yeah, so this is from this. And also, they looked for the coefficient variation of the interspike interval, and what they thought is that they will find that the interspike interval will decrease, but it increased, and when they compared it to the non-targeted shRNA, and they found that the firing activity of the cells is really erratic and abnormal, and I think it kind of connects to what they said with the mice model that they talked about, that they find there's a difference in the activity of the cells. So it's not just risk-taking, but it is something that is inside. And they saw that there's no significant difference between predominant firing rate of control cells and dystonic cells, but there's an additional peak of the shorter interval spike interspike interval in the dystonic mice. So, as I told you, they checked both the DCN and the Purkinje cells, and they found that here as well that the average firing rate is decreased in the Purkinje cells, and that the coefficient variation of the interspike interval is increased, like they found in the deep cerebellar nuclei. And then,
okay.
Yeah.
So, the next thing that they wanted to look for is the intrinsic activity of those Purkinje cells and the DCN. They did pretty much the same methods, the same recording, extracellular, but this time they. So the first thing they wanted to check the Purkinje cells because they are pacemaking cells. So they know that the Purkinje cells are supposed to have intrinsic activity regardless of what their input is. And they also know that they have high expression of tyrosine A, so it was most likely that this tyrosine A knockdown will affect them. So what they did, they blocked all glutamatic and GABAergic activity, so to speak. And so they knew that by extracellular recording, they will not record the LFT, the synaptic, but they will measure the intrinsic activity. And again, they want to see the difference between the firing rate and the coefficient of variation of the interspike interval. And we can see in B, I hope that you can see in B, I'll explain from here, that there's no difference between all the control and the tyrosine knockdown mice. So you have no significant difference in the firing rate, so they require pretty much the same amount of a spike. But when you look on the variation, which means the variation in the interspike interval, you see the huge difference, which means that they have more bursts, which is a short interspike interval, and long period of time that no spike is shown. And so you really take, and this is something that they didn't put in the paper, it's something that I will say, so some it is not true, but this pacemaking cell or no organ pacemaking, you can see this, I think I have it here, no? Okay, I want to show you like this. On here, I want to show you this. This is it looks like a pacemaking cell. You have an intrinsic activity which every few milliseconds, I don't know, but every time. And here you can see a strong burst and then silencing. So this is no longer a pacemaking as much as I understand. And this is also represented in E, in this strong peak in the left side of the bar, which means that you have a lot of short interspike interval, which means that you have a lot of bursts. They did it also the same thing in the DCN, in the deep cerebellar nuclei. Again, blocked all glutamergic and GABAergic information. Those are also pacemaking cells, as you can see in the left. Once again, as I said. And again, they looked for the firing rate versus the coefficient of variation of the interspike interval. And again, they saw, actually here they saw a strong decrease in the firing rate, so a lot less firing. But what it is, but the firing was in a strong variation. Again, similar to what we saw in the Purkinje cells. Interesting to see that here the shift is to the
right.
Longer interspike interval, which means that you have more silent part, more silent part, more than the bursting part. And here I'll show you what I talked about. Okay, so this, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read it. This is from the paper itself. This combined in vitro electrophysiological findings suggest that knockdown of taurin A in the adult mouse, cerebellum affect the intrinsic activity. It lists of two populations of the cerebellar neuron, the Purkinje cells and the DCN, which means that they are most likely to contribute to dystonia. Those two populations. Another thing that they found is the knockdown of this taurin A. It results in cell death within the DCN. They show it here. Can you see? Okay. They show it here, but when we look on the graph, we can see that while they inject and they look at three groups, let's say, of the just a wild type, and then a non-targeted short RNA, which means they did the whole injection, but no of the specific taurin A and the specific of taurin A, and they saw that you have cell death while you injecting, and you do the whole procedure of getting inside of the cell or to the population cells, but you have a significant death when you inject with the specific taurin A. Which means that it suggests that the DCN is sensitive to dysfunction of taurin A. Again, toward the dystonia and the importance of taurin A in dystonia and the importance of DCN in dystonia. And the last thing that they show that early postnatal knockdown of taurin A in the cerebellum result in attenuated symptoms. And they talked about mice injected in the early postnatal period developed only mild motor symptoms and no dystonia. And you can see on C in the graph that while you inject into juveniles, the juvenile is a few days old, in mice, and you see no dystonia score to this group, which is important later on to the summary or to the discussion of this paper. So to the summary. Just what we talk, knockdown of taurin A in the basal ganglia does not result in dystonia. To the adult mouse in the cerebellum does occur dystonia. The severity is pretty sort of obvious, but it's the severity of the symptoms is dose dependent, which help to prove, not to prove, but I don't know, to connect between the taurin A knockdown and the dystonic relationship. The DCN and the Purkinje cell both have both affected by loss of taurin A, and so both of them exhibit irregular, erratic, and different firing rate with burst and strong coefficients of variation of the interspike interval. a knockdown of DOCA alter also the intrinsic activity. So it's something within the cell themselves, and not necessarily by the information that you got. And a few more words with things. So about irregular bursting, when you connect this to a human patient, so similar bursting cerebellar outputs has also been documented in dystonic patients undergoing surgery. So you can see the importance of this. When we work on mice, we can also see the connectivity of how it goes also with humans. About DBS and TMS, so as they spoke before, but cerebellar deep brain stimulation and TMS might also be effective in lesion dystonia in patients, something that was promising in the discussion of this paper. And we talk about why basal ganglia, which I know it's a long time ago, but we talk about why basal ganglia, and they saw that they hypothesized, they explain why they look for the basal ganglia and the cerebellum, and why not, I don't know, the prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum. So even though the tyrosine A knockdown doesn't affect the basal ganglia does get a lot, I don't know if most, but a lot of its information from the cerebellum, from the DCN. And so if the DCN and the Purkinje cells don't work as well, and with a non-informative bursting fire, I don't know, so the basal ganglia will look like it has some abnormality in its firing edge. In the future, so two things that I want to see. With regards to this dystonia, what remains to be established is how loss of tyrosine A function disrupts cerebral activity. So in this paper, which is not that long time ago, they didn't really know what this tyrosine A gene protein's functionality. So they hypothesized that it could be connected to synaptic transmission or ER stress, or even how you say it, intrinsic factor. Initiation factors and stuff like this. So we need to understand this protein activity in order to understand how to fight with it, or how to compensate it. And compensate, they also wanted to understand the compensatory mechanism of this juvenile mice. And when we'll understand which protein they produce in more, or they increase some I don't know, when they'll find out the compensatory mechanism in this mice, in the juvenile mice, maybe we can use it as a drug to symptoms of the adult mice and human. And that's it.
Questions? Okay, so the trick, again, I need to teach you the major role of moderator. There are two roles for the moderator of a session. One, to keep the speaker from dying, and the second role is to have a question in case nobody from the audience asks. Okay, so be aware of it. If someone asks you to be the moderator, okay, you're supposed to be able to ask questions that are related. Before asking questions, just to say, this issue actually represents one of the, the biggest disappointment of people like me from from the way we can benefit from molecular biology up to the level of the patient. And again, I will take it, so overall, we know the gene, okay? We know the gene product, okay? And nevertheless, nothing that we understand how to treat patients. And what I can tell you from my personal history is the case from Huntington's. We spoke about Huntington, another disease of the basal ganglia, okay? Chorea, the Huntington chorea, and again, autosomal dominant disease. And in 1985, so almost 30 years ago, there was a big discovery. The gene for Huntington has been discovered. It is autosomal dominant disease. Everybody was happy. happy, and everybody told us, okay, just one few months we'll have the gene product, which is huntingtin, again, something like toxin A, okay, over here, and we'll cure Huntington.
30 years
Maybe
later.
30 years later, nothing happened. Okay, so it is very, very frustrating the way from here to there, and I think that this is a major issue. To share with you again, and this is something which is really important, the direction that they are saying is that also in DYT1. DYT1 mutation, we know that this is a mutation with a variable penetrance. Namely, not every patient that has the mutation, or not every human being that has the mutation, will have the disease. Okay, so this is the meaning of variable penetration, and therefore it could be that the difference is actually in this kind of compensation process that are different in one brother and different in another brother, and therefore two brothers of the same family might have one is very, very severe dystonia and the other is completely normal, and therefore I think that this direction is important. Two questions for you. Okay, one question which is, you can give it back to me. You are using the coefficient of variation of the interspike interval in order to assess the firing pattern of the sperm. Can you say why higher coefficient of variation of interspike interval is hinting at bursting activity? Okay, so I'll take it back, okay? But I think this is important, okay? So the coefficient of variation, okay, of the interspike interval, we have all the interspike interval, and we calculate for them the mean interspike interval and the standard deviation of the standard of okay, so the coefficient, you have it? Okay.
Maybe you can.
Yeah, okay. So the coefficient of variation is FD divided by the mean of the ISI. Okay. If it is very, very periodic, can they get you? Okay. If this is very, very periodic, the SD is equal 0. Okay. And the coefficient for the periodic, okay, the coefficient of variation will be 0. Okay. Okay. If it is Poisson, okay, then again everybody for Poisson it will be 1. Okay. And finally for Berthier, okay, because there will be very short interval and very big interval, okay, it will be bigger than 1. Okay. So therefore we can use the coefficient of variation, okay, of the interspike interval just in order to assess the firing pattern with all this from periodic Poisson to Berthier, and this is what they are using over there. Okay, so where this paper has been published? Okay, where?
Eli.
It is a good journal or bad journal?
Let's say it's not Nature or Science, but
what?
it's not Nature or Science.
So I think this is, first of all, so this is a kind of a comment, okay? When you present a paper, you should be able to say where this paper has been published, okay? Okay, it is important, okay? Because it tells us, again, we have a kind of, there are too many journals outside in the public. Some of them are considered yellow journal with high impact, okay? And some of them are money machine that you can ignore most of the publication, okay? Most of the paper published, okay? And it is important. It is not that there is always one-to-one correlation. That is, if it is published in Nature Neuroscience is good, if it is published in Frontiers is bad, okay? But still, okay, there is a vague correlation between the quality of paper published and the journals that are published. And again, this is something that we have to say. E-life is
supposed to be ideological.
Yeah. Exactly. So the problem is that this impact factor. Okay, so do you know this terminology of impact factor? Okay. So the problem with the impact factor industry is that it took out the control of good science from the end of scientists and give it to the end of people that are in the best case trying to make money or anyway, outside the end of scientists, because in this very high impact journal like Nature Neuroscience and so on, the editor are professional editor and not real scientists, okay? So the people that are sitting on the gate of publishing in the high impact journal are people that usually failed to be real scientists, okay? This is the situation right now, okay? And then these people of e-life, okay, that are kind of, let's say, East United States, okay, Boston and the like, okay, or trying to be outside of the story and say, no, we are not, we are going to have a journal that will have high impact. Officially, they don't give the impact factor of it, but everybody knows, you know, and we'll try to have the control of publication that it will be done by scientists and not by professional editors. It is the take-home message is that when you publish a paper, when you speak about the paper, say where it is published, okay, and also give to the audience, okay, what is the impact factor of the journal, or if it is real life, okay, it is the story. So this is the story. Finally, to say that of course people are trying now deep stimulation of